Virtual Unit Peer Leader Annual Training. These modules have been developed in consultation with earlymobility.com. This module is on equipment review, lifts and slings, key considerations for purchasing, equipment fares, and sustainability of your program. earlymobility.com does not endorse any product or product vendor and does not sell any safe patient handling and mobility technology. The videos used for these modules are purely representative of the types of SPHM assistive technologies available, and there are many versions of all of the assistive technologies that you will see in the videos in these modules. Check with your Safe Patient Handling and Mobility Facility Program Manager to determine the model you have in your facility. Equipment review, lifts and slings, key considerations for purchasing, equipment fares, and sustainability of your program. Part 1, we're going to look at mechanical lifts. The learning objectives are to identify the types of lifts and what they are used for, know the features of different lifts and differences between different models, and know the processes that will ensure equipment is available when you need it. There are several categories of equipment that we're going to discuss: full body lifts, air-assisted technology, friction-reducing devices, bed features, sit-to-stand devices, and other miscellaneous devices. First, let's talk about full body lifts. These are broken into two categories, sometimes called dependent lifts, and they can be mounted in the ceiling, called ceiling lifts, or they can be based on the floor with wheels, which are called floor-based lifts, or FBL for short. For ceiling lifts, there's many different configurations that can be installed. So ceiling lifts can be either mounted in the ceiling, which you'll see this one is actually mounted directly up into the ceiling. But some ceilings are not strong enough to bear the weight capacity. So these, although they're called ceiling lifts, can also be mounted into the wall, and they can be freestanding, what they call a gantry system. And it's basically 4 posts, and then the rails are attached to the top of the posts. Those can also be set up in patient rooms if you're not able to get into the ceiling, or if you've got older buildings, if you've got asbestos in the ceilings, or if you've got construction restraints where you've perhaps got ductwork, or you've got other structures in the ceiling that you cannot get around. There are other ways to install these kinds of overhead lifts. There's also straight track configuration, and there's an XY. A straight track basically goes in a straight line with the motor attached to it on a roller that moves back and forth. The configuration you see here is an XY. So what you can see is the X beams are attached to the ceiling, and then it's got a cross beam, a Y beam, that moves anywhere across the room. The motor on the Y rail can move anywhere along the rail. So this configuration effectively gives us full coverage of the whole area under the XY system. The straight tracks are attached to the ceiling, and they can be straight or they can be curved. If you want your track system to go into a patient bathroom, or in a rehab gym where you might want a lap going all the way around, so more of an oval or a circular track, that you can actually have patients walk laps around for exercise or rehabilitation. So many different types of ceiling lifts and configurations for you to consider. Make sure you know the weight capacity of the motor of your lift. There are some times where the weight capacity of a sling may be different from the weight capacity of your lift. You're always going to defer to the lowest weight capacity of any combination of lift and sling that you are using. As far as using and maintaining the ceiling lifts and the motors, know your manufacturer, know obviously how the motor works, the buttons on the hand control. Some motors have two-way motors, which means that the up and down is the only directions that are motorized. The movement of the rail and the motor on the rail are on smooth rollers, but they are not motorized. Some lifts have a four-way motor where you can mechanize or motorize the up and down, but they also have a motor which will move the lift unit itself on the rail back and forward. That would be a four-way motor. Know what the emergency lowering is. Anytime you have a powered device, you want to make sure that you can override it. You don't ever want a scenario where you have a patient suspended and there's a failure of the motor of the lift. So for example, in this case, if I pull on the red cord, you'll hear a beep and the mechanism for holding the strap in will release and lower the patient. You are going to have to push it back in again in order to then have the lift function. Pull down on the emergency cord and it will lower, and then push up on it again to make the lift function again. Anytime you have to override the power, call in a work order or a service request on the lift for somebody from Biomed to come and take a look at it. The other thing is that they are always charged. Some ceiling lifts or overhead lifts have continuous charge where they don't have a specific charging station. With this particular model, my charging station is all the way in the corner. You'll see there's a power cord, and that leads to a connection that charges the battery only when it's on the charger. Make sure that the charger is working, that the ceiling lift is fully charged every night, and when you check the lift, check them loaded. Often people will check the lift goes up and down with the button without a load, but if the battery is real low, when you add a load, and you can do this just by holding it, if the lift does not lift you up easily, and if it makes a straining noise, when it is loaded, you know that the battery needs to be charged. And then lastly, know the mechanism for how your hand pendant works. In this particular lift, the hand pendant is an air pneumatic device that sometimes can get disconnected. So if the lift is not working, it may just be that needs to be reconnected. That may not be the case in all of your lifts, but the message is know your lift, know how everything functions on your lift, and be able to troubleshoot. Know if there's spare parts, if your service department keeps spare parts, spare hanger bars, spare pins, hand pendants. Oftentimes there are some spare parts in your facility. You should always know who to call and where to go if your lift is not functioning correctly. Ceiling lift hanger bars are almost always loop style hanger bars with a gate mechanism that has a loop, and it may have a spring to close this gate. In this one it does not. This is a 2-point hanger bar, but you also have some lifts with 4-point hanger bars, and some manufacturers even make a longer attachment where you can have 6 or even 8 points to attach, especially for your bariatric patients or your repositioning slings, so that you can spread the load over a wider area. You can use a full body sling with this, so a seated sling, a hygiene sling. You can use a repositioning sling for bed mobility. You can also use ambulation slings with a ceiling lift. The only sling you're not going to use is a sit-to-stand sling that is specifically designed to work with a sit-to-stand mechanism. But any of those slings that have a loop attachment, you can use on a loop style hanger bar. You must not ever use a clip style sling on a loop style hanger bar. That can result in grave injury to the patient and it will not be safe. So as you can see, there are many different designs, and I hope that you heard the big message in these prior videos. Know your equipment, contact your manufacturer if there's anything that is not working with your lifts, either with the motor, with the rails, with the hanger bar, or if you're not certain how it works, how the emergency lowering works, get in touch with your manufacturer and know that before you use any of the lifts in your department. With floor-based lifts, there are also variations in design. The biggest difference, obviously, is that they are on the floor and they are on wheels. So rather than a lift that's in the ceiling, you now have the lift itself to consider in the space around the patient. You have to think about the size of the casters. A larger caster on a floor-based lift is going to make for easier pushing and pulling, but sometimes the larger casters do not fit under some of your beds. So whenever you are considering a floor-based lift for your unit or your facility, bring the lifts in and trial them with the beds that you have in your facility. If you're considering getting new patient beds, make sure that the lifts you have that are on the floor are able to fit under the frame of the bed. Otherwise, you can end up with an incompatibility issue. The other considerations for floor-based lifts are whether the lift itself has power to move it or whether you have to push and pull the lift to move it with the patient in the sling. Depending on how far you need to move a patient, that will determine whether you need power or whether you can have a manual push-pull. Or if you have carpet, the push-pull forces are greater than if you have a vinyl or a wood floor. You also have differences in design of the boom. Some lifts have a hanger bar that moves down away from the boom on a belt. You see this in the last picture on the right. Other lifts have a boom where the whole boom moves down, and you see this in the middle two lifts. On the lift on your left, it does have the hanger bar that moves away with a strap. So know whether your lift will go all the way to the floor. Know the push-pull forces and the size of the casters. Some lift manufacturers make different sizes of casters with a tall wheelbase and a short wheelbase, specifically for getting under patient beds. The difference between a ceiling lift and a floor-based lift is somebody has to watch where the floor-based lift goes, and you have to manage the size and dimensions of the floor-based lift, and you have to be able to get wheels around chairs. So you also want to look at whether the lift feet go in and out, or the base of the lift goes in and out. Some of them go in and out with a spreading motion. Others go in and out with a lateral movement of the whole base. Look at your spaces, bring your lifts in, and this goes for all floor-based lifts, not just your full body lifts, but your sit-to-stand lifts, whether they're powered or non-powered as well. You also want to look at the hanger bar. You'll see on these different lifts, the first one has a 2-point loop style hanger bar that we just talked about. The second one has a 4-point hanger bar that can be converted to a 2-point by taking the side attachments off of the main 2-point spreader bar across the middle. You see that on the second lift. The third floor-based lift you see has what they call a dynamic positioning system. It is a clip style with a different point of attachment for the sling to the lift. And then the last lift on the right, you will see has the 2-point hanger bar that moves all the way to the floor with the hanger bar on the belt. So let's talk about sit-to-stand devices. These can be either powered, which categorically we called PSS, or powered sit-to-stands. They can also be non-powered, where the patient has to pull themselves up. And these are called non-powered sit-to-stand aids, or NPSS for a category. For powered sit-to-stand devices, or standing and raising aids, there's many different varieties and makes and styles that are available. But they all have a similar feature where there's a handle to hold on to that basically pulls the patient from a sitting to a standing position. The weight capacity on this is 430 pounds, and you can see in real small writing there, it has the weight capacity. Make sure that you know the weight capacity of the lift. Sometimes you have to look on the lift to find it. Many facilities I have found actually write the weight capacity in large permanent marker, or they have stickers or label on that everybody can see so that it's easy for people to know what the weight capacity is. Most of your sit-to-stands also have this button that the wheels go out and back in again. And if you look at the wheels, they'll power out and power in. This helps you get around wheelchairs or jerry chairs, or if the bed that you're going underneath has a 5th wheel, sometimes you need to maneuver the wheels out or back in to be able to get in under the bed. The bariatric lift has a slightly different way of moving the feet in and out, and different manufacturers have accomplished this in different ways. The Vancare lift, you have a lever which pulls around and you see the feet going out and in. If we bring it back, the feet come in. The size of the wheels are going to vary on different lifts. You'll see on these two lifts, the mini lift has bigger casters than the bariatric lift, and this is an 800-pound capacity. The wheels are smaller, which will fit under smaller beds, but larger wheels are typically easier to push. So on any floor-based lift, a larger caster reduces the push-pull forces, but it's a little more difficult to get under low surfaces than some of the smaller wheelbases or the lower wheelbases. You'll also notice there's a big difference in the width of the knee pads. The mini lift is a 430 pounds weight capacity, and it has a much narrower knee support. The 800-pound lift has a lot wider of a knee support to accommodate that increased width of stance that is very, very common in patients who are of size. You'll also notice that the foot plate on the bariatric lift is a lot wider than the foot plate on the mini lift. So when you're looking at your sit-to-stand devices, you want to look at the features and make sure that you have the features that you need, and you may need more than one style to accommodate all your different patients. The other feature that you'll see on your floor-based sit-to-stands is the knee support may go up and down. In this one, the knee support goes down, goes up, so so that you can attach it right at the level below the kneecap on your patients. In the van care model, it does not go up and down. It's fixed, but you'll see it's a lot deeper from top to bottom. That enables you to accommodate a wide range of patient heights. So some manufacturers make a deeper knee support, others make it mobile. Another comparative feature is whether or not the foot plate comes off. On the mini lift, the foot plate lifts off. It's easier to get the foot plate off when the knee support is higher. And these are just things that as you get good at knowing your equipment, you're going to learn what makes it easy to get the equipment functioning for the activity that you want it to function for. You also want to make sure that you're using good body mechanics when you put the foot plate on and off, and that you're not bending over to pick up the foot plate as you're getting it on and off the lift. The benefit of having a removable foot plate is you can use the lift for ambulation. With the knee support in case the patient's knees buckle. In the bariatric lift, the foot plate does not come off, so you cannot use that lift for ambulation, but you still are going to be able to stand your patient up with it. The hand pendant, when we look at the mini lift, the way it attaches to the lift is to hook onto one of the bars. On the van care lift, the hand pendant is magnetic. So again, these are different user preferences that when you're looking at different lifts might make one lift preferable over another. You'll see that they have very different footprints. If I have to get into small bathrooms, I'm not going to be able to accomplish that with this lift, but I might be able to get into a small bathroom with the mini lift. Powered sit-to-stands have differing features that when you do equipment fairs, you want to make sure you understand all the differences and the features that are going to be beneficial for your patient population in your particular environment and care setting for the tasks and the kinds of patients that you're going to need. Non-powered stand aids are similar to the powered stand aids, except there's no motor. When you're looking at features, you want to see if the knee plate comes up and down. So in this one, it does, to accommodate patients with different size of legs. The feet go in and out, similar to your powered stand aids, to get around chairs, to get around wheelchairs, or under beds that have a fifth wheel. You also want to know if the foot plate comes off. On this one, the foot plate is removable. On this device, this is also a non-powered stand aid, and the foot plate does come off on this one. Slightly different mechanism you can see here, but we're not going to take it off for the purposes of demonstration. The knee pad on this device is flexible and mobile. It does go up and down. This one is rigid. So slight differences in the knee support. On this device, this is also a non-powered stand aid, and it has knee supports, but this is kind of unique in that the knee supports swivel. So if you have a patient that has non-weight bearing on one leg, they can actually put their leg on here. The radius and the footprint you can see on this device, which is called a van turn or a return, is much smaller than the footprint on this one or on this device. So when you are looking at making purchases, pay attention to the different features. One other feature that this device has in the knee block is it can move in and out. so it can accommodate patients with shorter femur lengths or longer femur lengths. The weight capacity of this one, if we look, is 450 pounds right here. The weight capacity of this device is 170 kilograms. This one has a capacity of 330 pounds. And you can see there's just a little label right on the handle that tells you the weight capacity. Lastly, these two models have seats that flip down behind them. The mechanism of the flip of the seat is something else you want to look at. Sometimes if you have patients with wider hips, it can be difficult to lift these flaps up in this manner. So both of these models have an alternate way of raising the flap or getting it out of the patient's way so that you can get the patient in and then put the flap in behind them. The advantage of that is that if the patient needs to sit, they can sit on the support and be transported back to where they need to go. So lots of different features of the lifts for you to consider ahead of purchasing. And when you do equipment fairs, you can perhaps put checklists together of the features that your team likes the best or work the best in your unit. The next device we're going to talk about is friction reducing devices. These are any device that help overcome the friction from moving a person along a surface, either up and down in bed or during lateral transfers. They can be used to help insert slings in bed or in chairs. They can be used for exercising in bed. They can be mechanical or non-mechanical. Mechanical FRDs or friction reducing devices include crank type or electric rollers that can actually mechanically pull the patient on the specialty surface from one surface to another. Or they can be non-mechanical devices, which can include boards with friction reducing properties such as slide boards, or they can be roller boards, or they can just be slide sheets that are variable in their makeup. Some are more of a plastic type material that have a silicone or a coating that makes them slippery, or it might be more of a nylon material, more of a woven material with, again, a slippery surface that enables you to move your patient on a surface with very little force or between one surface and another. And we'll see several examples of these. This is an example in an MRI facility where they're using two friction reducing devices to transfer the patient from the stretcher onto the MRI surface or back from the surface onto the stretcher. And you will see that one slide sheet is moving on top of the other, and it eliminates the friction of that transfer. Here we will see air assist technology, which is another technology to help you with moving a patient on a horizontal surface. This version is a single patient use mattress, and the blower is blowing air into the mattress and out of thousands of little holes underneath the mattress. This effectively hovers the patient from one surface to the other. This can also be used for moving a patient up and down the bed or from side to side. It can also be helpful in helping you turn a patient over. So different ways of performing lateral transfers without the friction and without the force of pushing and pulling, which are one of the greatest sources of caregiver injury. You'll see in this video, we're using an air jacking system where the air is basically being used to lift the patient off the floor. This particular version is called a hover mat or a hover jack. And you'll see it's like 4 chambers of air mattress. You connect the air hose to lift the patient up. And then once the patient is at the same height as the bed, you then can connect your air hose to the mattress and move them over. Again, as we said at the beginning of this module, there are a variety of manufacturers who produce these products. There's also many features of the bed that you can use to mobilize the patient instead of lifting them. Many beds go into a chair position, and you'll see in this one, the caregiver is using the bed rail to help the patient pull themselves forward. Some of your beds have frames that will go into a partial tilt or a full up standing position. The key again is to know your bed features, know what your frames will do, because when you are using the features of the bed, you can get so much more from your patient. In this particular model, it has a foot plate which bears weight. This can also be used to help push against for various activities when the patient is still in their bed. So the message with all of these lifts and their features is know your products, know all the features they will do, and use those to help replace the manual lifting to assist your patients to move. There are other solutions that are what we call miscellaneous solutions. There's ladders that can assist with bed mobility, helping lift limbs in and out of bed, or helping a patient pull themselves up from a supine to a sitting position. Pivot discs that help somebody pivot around, either on a bed or in a chair or in a car. One-way slider cushions that can help prevent a patient from sliding down in the bed. Handy glides, plastic material gliders that can be placed behind a patient to put a sling in when it's difficult to move the patient. Try to stay on top of the new innovations. Go to the conferences, ask your manufacturers to show you when they have new products, because designs and innovations are occurring all the time. Keep your eyes open for innovations and solutions where you currently have gaps or challenges in particular, and ask your manufacturers for those areas where you don't have good solutions. Sometimes you will find manufacturers who are prepared to do some research and design around your ideas. Cleaning and maintenance of your lifts. You must clean your lifts thoroughly after every use with your facility approved cleaner. Make sure all surfaces, including straps, hanger bars, foot plates, hand controls, and handles are completely cleaned. Check your lift every time before using it to ensure it is clean and in good working order. Check the function of your lift before you put the patient in and raise them. Make sure your batteries are charged. Check for any cracks or scratches or rough areas, including frayed straps. Make sure the brakes are working on your lifts, and make sure your hand controls are working. Ensure all lifts have a preventive maintenance schedule, including your motors and your batteries, hanger bars, lift mechanisms, and your casters if the lift is floor-based. Know how to put in an electronic work order if your lift is not working correctly. Let's check our knowledge. Your patient's mobility goal is walking. Their mobility level 3P. In one of the other modules, we'll go over the mobility screen and the level. But a 3P means your patient needs powered help to stand up or walk. Which equipment solution would be appropriate to help get your patient to the bathroom? A powered sit-to-stand aid with a removable foot plate. B, a floor-based full body lift with an ambulation sling. C, a friction-reducing device. Or D, both A and B are appropriate. The answer is D. You could use a sit-to-stand aid with a removable foot plate or a full body lift with an ambulation sling. Now, if you had a sit-to-stand aid with a fixed foot plate, that would achieve a goal of standing, but your patient's mobility goal is walking. So if you have a fixed foot plate, then of these solutions, only the floor-based lift with an ambulation sling would be appropriate. But because your sit-to-stand aid has a removable foot plate, you can achieve that patient's mobility goal of walking. Let's look at another example. Your patient needs to be boosted up in bed. They are mobility level 1, which means they cannot sit unsupported without help. Which of the following equipment options would be appropriate to safely boost them? A, a powered sit-to-stand. B, a ceiling lift with a repositioning sling. C, a friction-reducing slide sheet. Or D, both B and C are appropriate. If you chose D, you are correct. You could use a ceiling lift or a floor-based lift with a repositioning sling, or you could use a friction-reducing slide sheet to help the patient boost up in bed. A co-worker tells you that the ceiling lift is not working. What troubleshooting steps could you take in this case? A, check that the battery is charged. B, check that the right sling is being used. C, check that it has been properly cleaned. Or D, check that the hanger bar is properly attached. The answer is A, check that the battery is charged. Now, all of these answers are correct in terms of things you should check before you lift your patient. However, if the fact is your ceiling lift is not working, the battery is the most likely option. A sling is not going to impact the working of the lift. The cleaning is not going to impact whether or not the motor is working. And whether or not the hanger bar is properly attached will not affect whether or not the motor is working. What lift feature must you know in case the down button does not work while a patient is in the lift? Is it A, the weight capacity? B, how the base of the lift goes in and out? C, how the emergency lowering works? Or D, how the lift charges? The correct answer is C, how the emergency lowering works. All of these are important things to know about your lift, but in terms of making sure a patient does not get stuck in the up position, you must know how the emergency lowering works. So what is your role as a unit peer leader? You must know what equipment you have on your unit and all the features of that equipment. Understand how to choose the correct equipment for mobility goals for your patient population and based on your mobility screening. Understand the safety checks and daily maintenance and cleaning of all the equipment on your unit. Promote mobility uses of equipment on your unit. Help patients understand how they can participate even if a lift is used. Ensure that safe patient handling mobility equipment is always operational and easily accessible and available. And attend unit peer leader meetings to discuss challenges with your facility coordinator. The role of management is to allocate resources to ensure all caregivers have the equipment they need to safely move and mobilize their patients to the appropriate mobility goal. Work with your unit peer leaders to ensure equipment is always available and operational. And finally, assist unit peer leaders with problem solving for equipment issues. Part 2 of our equipment review is on slings. Our learning objectives are to identify 3 different types of slings and what they're used for, understand sling safety processes, and identify worn slings that should be replaced and taken out of service. A disclaimer about the lifts and the sling modules. The information contained in these modules is created by an external education company, and information contained in these modules should be verified and approved by facility personnel prior to distribution. Always follow your manufacturer instructions for all lift equipment and sling usage. Examples shared in these modules are generic and are not intended to be instructions for use for any specific lift and/or sling. You must check with your individual manufacturer for specific instructions for use. General information about slings. The sling itself determines the function of your lift. Slings can be launderable or wipeable, which are both reusable, or they can be single patient use or disposable. You'll see in the picture, this is an example of an SPU sling, where it can be used over and over again with the same patient, but cannot be laundered and reused with another patient. There are various types of attachments and how the slings attach to the lifts. The sling can have a loop style attachment, as you see in the first picture. It can have a clip style, as you see in the middle picture, or it can have a lock and loop style attachment where there's actually a rope on the lift itself, which hooks through a loop on the sling and then loops into itself. Most notably, the Arjo model of the Sarah Plus sit to stand device is where you will see your lock and loop style of connection between the lift and the sling. It is very, very important to know how your sling attaches to the lift and to only use loop style slings with loop style hanger bars, only use clip style slings with clip style hanger bars, and only use lock and loop style slings with your lock and loop style hanger bar. The various different types of slings include repositioning slings, which are flat sheets and used, as their name implies, for repositioning in bed. Uses include proning, boosting, turning, lateral transfers, cleaning the patient, or replacing bed linens. When it comes to seated slings or split leg slings, these can be high back, as in the first picture. They can be low back slings where the sling does not come as high up the patient's back and does not give support to the head. There are hygiene slings where the lower left picture shows where the perineum is open so that you can toilet the patient or they can perform self-hygiene. And there are clip style split leg slings that are like the high back, but again, connect to the dynamic positioning system with a clip style hanger bar and the plastic clips on the sling, which connect to the attachment points on the hanger bar. We talked earlier in the lift module about placing the base of the lift under the bed and knowing where your spots are that you can move that wheelbase underneath. And for a loop style seated sling, always crisscross the loops when we reach underneath. We are looping them through. Make sure the loops of your sling are firmly seated in the hanger bar. You do not want them to be like this all the way in, and always double check that these are secure. Some lifts, the hanger bar is on a strap that will come out. Some, the whole boom comes down. Jen, we're going to go ahead and lift you up. If anything pinches you, let me know, all right? As you lift the patient, check for pinch points. Ensure the patient is fully supported. It's not pinching in your legs.
No.
Especially as the patient comes off the surface. Double check all of your attachments. If you are going to leave the area from the bed, you always want a second person. If you come up and just guide the patient here. You good there, Kim?
Right now?
And it's cold too.
Ambulation slings. There are many different types of ambulation slings, as you see in this slide. There are some that are basically a belt around the pelvis or the waist with straps coming between the legs for fall arrest. There are some slings that are more of a vest style. Some have supports through the legs. Others catch the patient around the ribs if the patient loses their balance. In the middle picture, you will see more of a shorts style sling where it's got a belt or a support around circumferentially around the waist, and it has shorts effectively or walking pants around the thighs. There are some slings that include a vest and shorts or a walking pant design. And lastly, there are diaper style ambulation harnesses, which basically are shaped like a diaper that go through the groin area and support the patient if they fall. Some slings are mobility slings and can be multi-function. In this particular version, you will see where the mobility sling is used for bed mobility. Many of your ambulation slings can be used for this function too, and not only ambulation. But you must, again, always check with your manufacturer what they approve the uses of your slings to do. If you have gaps, don't be afraid to ask your manufacturer if they will approve a certain piece of equipment to do a certain function. Always look first in the instructions for use or the IFU. But if you don't see that, don't be afraid to ask the manufacturer if they will approve a certain sling for a certain function that you would like to do with your patient. There are also specialty slings, limb slings, bariatric slings, panis slings, multifunction slings, double amputee slings, turning slings. Almost all functions that you need to do with your patient, there are supports and slings to do that. Again, as I said on the last slide, if you're not sure, reach out to your manufacturer and ask them what they have available. If they don't have it, reach out to your network, to your facility coordinator or your program manager, to your other unit peer leaders. Go to conferences, look up online for manufacturers, go to the Association of Safe Patient Handling website. There's lots of resources that you may be able to find products that are new to help you with a gap you have in care. We also need to be sure that we are choosing the correct size of sling for our patient. One size fits all versus individual sizes. We need to look at the length of the sling from a high back spanning the head to the tailbone. We've got to look at the girth of the sling. Sometimes the weight capacity and the girth don't match up. We've got to make sure that the sling of choice adequately supports the patient in the movement that we have in front of us. We need to know the weight capacity of the sling. We must always look at the sling and lift capacity and compatibility. If you've got a sling that is a 400-pound capacity and a lift that's a 1,000-pound capacity, that combination can only lift 400 pounds. You always use the lowest of those two weights. We've got to think about our precautions, either hip precautions, or if we're in the ICU, any lines, tubes, and drains. Look at your slings and your options in every care setting that you are assisting patients with their mobility. Color coding is also important and varies by manufacturer. Always double check the size and weight, regardless of the color. For example, you'll see in this color guide, small is orange, medium is yellow, large is blue, extra large is black, double XL is white. However, in this particular model, the different sizes are different colors. So again, always check regarding your colors, check what they mean, check the weights, check the sizes of each and every sling. To insert a full body sling or a seated sling, if the patient is able to roll by themselves, then we're going to have them roll. I'm going to start, Jan, by bending this knee up, bend it all the way up, good. Reach this arm to that side rail and turn your head. So go ahead and come on over, line it up to check it's the right size. The shoulder strap should be at the shoulder, and then the bottom of the sling should be right about the sacrum, right about the buttock. So this is actually too big for Jan. Let's get a different sling that will be more appropriately sized. So lay this along, put this on her shoulder, and then this comes down to the sacrum, which is the right level. And I'm going to just tuck you here a little bit, then come on back. Yeah, roll back. My wheels up this side, and I'm going to get the rest of the sling from the other side.
Roll.
Yes, ma'am. Good. And again, it's lined up, so go ahead and come on back, Jack. Sling is in. So that's an example of sling sizing with an incorrect size and also with a correct size of sling. On every sling, you should see the weight capacity, and the label should show that very clearly. You see this in all these different examples. If your label is worn and you cannot read the sling capacity and the weight capacity, discard that sling, because it can create risk for your patient with using a sling that has not got the adequate support for the patient that you're going to lift them. The sling label should also include whether it's launderable or single patient use, and the cleaning instructions. You will see on these various different examples of sling labels that it's clearly got the laundering instructions, whether you can put it in the dryer. Some of them will have a temperature limit. So you'll see here 80 degrees is the maximum that sling should be laundered at. You'll see in this version in the middle here where it has the warning sign and the laundry indicator, this is a single patient use sling that has been laundered. What the laundry indicator says is this sling has been laundered and must not be used again. So that helps you take it out of circulation, and it helps you know that is a single patient use as opposed to a re-launderable harness or sling. And in the last example, you'll see it in the narrative. If your sling does not have the cleaning instructions, make sure you know in the instruction for use how that sling should be cleaned. Are the uses of the sling clear? This is another thing to look for in your labels. You'll see in all three of the examples provided here, the use of the sling is on the label, which helps you know exactly what that sling is used for. If you do not have this on the label, you're going to have to go to the instructions for use to make sure that everybody in your department knows every function of every harness, what it can be used for, what it is designed to be used for, and what it is not used for. Some slings have a QR code to scan for instructions. This is a very helpful element or a feature that helps you go right to the instruction page of the manufacturer for that particular product. It just helps skip a couple of steps in terms of looking at the IFU. But again, it's not a necessary feature. It's just a feature that is a little bit more convenient for you. The weight capacity and the cleaning instructions, those must be present for you to use your sling safely. Again, if the weight capacity is worn off and you cannot read it, that sling must be taken out of service. There is a task force of safe patient handling and mobility experts that have come up with a sling and hanger bar guidelines. These were produced in 2016 and these were then updated in 2021. They can be found at the link below if you are interested in reading the entire document. Safety checklists. Every time you use a sling, you should check that the sling has no holes or frayed straps. It has no fabric fraying or thinning, no loose stitches. Pay particular attention to connecting points where the straps are connected to the sling. These carry the highest tension during lifting. Check the weight limit of the sling. Ensure that none of the straps are knotted or tied. Make sure the hanger bar is appropriate for sling connection, whether it's a loop, a clip, or a lock and loop sling, and the number of points of attachment. Check the label to ensure it is intact. If the single patient use sling is laundered mistakenly, the label will show "do not use" or a laundry indicator. It is also important that you check the attachment to the lift. Make sure you check the metal or plastic connectors, that they are not cracked, they're not worn, and they're not misshapen. Check the metal or plastic connectors are securely attached to the straps of the sling. Again, remember the lifting point is the highest tension on the sling. Make sure again no straps are knotted or tied. Double check the hanger bar is appropriate. Make sure the hanger bar itself has no signs of wear, worn, cracked, rough edges, sharp areas. And if the hanger bar has a gated closure, make sure the gated mechanism is working. Do not use the sling if any issues were found in the prior two slide checklists. Lastly, check the patient before you lift them once the sling is in place. Make sure the sling is supporting the patient properly and comfortably. Make sure there's no areas pinching the patient, that the patient's weight is appropriately distributed for the planned activity, and check any other medical devices, IV lines, ventilator tubes, feeding tubes, chest tubes, drains, stomas or ileostomy bags, catheters, subcutaneous ports or devices, monitors, orthopedic braces, devices, prostheses. Remember that the sling and the lift are being used in combination with the holistic picture of everything that that patient is dealing with and all the devices they may be attached to. Ensure straps are not twisted or caught in any part of the patient or the lift before lifting. And raise your lift slowly, watching and checking all tension points as the lift takes up the tension and the patient weight. Ensure the sling is fully supporting the patient comfortably and the patient has not slipped into a position that is potentially unsafe. These three pictures all show signs of wear, and these slings should be taken out of use. In the first sling, it's very obvious the stitches are loose. In the second sling, it's very obvious there's a hole in the sling and it's worn. In the third picture, you have to look a little closely, but you see to the right of the picture that there are stitches worn along the rim or the hem of this sling. What that tells you is this sling has been worn and other parts of the sling may be under wear as well. All of these slings should be taken out of use and discarded. Inventory and storage. How many of each kind of sling should you have? You must know how many patients you have that need assistance with certain care activities on your unit. Where are your slings stored? What's the laundry process? What if your patient is on contact precautions? Who should you contact if you do not have enough, or if you notice a sling is damaged? As the unit peer leader, you should know the answers to all of these questions. If you don't, ask your facility coordinator or program manager so that you know how to address problems and make sure that your unit is fully equipped with the right number and all of your slings are in good working order. Your role as a unit peer leader is to know what slings you have, which lifts your slings attached to, and the functions of all your slings. Understand how to choose the correct slings for mobility goals based on your mobility screen or your VA MSST. Understand your safety checks and daily maintenance and cleaning of the slings on your unit. Ensure slings are always available and organized, labeled, and in good condition. Lastly, attend your unit peer leader meetings and discuss challenges with your facility coordinator or program manager. Let's check your knowledge. You go to get a sling for your patient to get up to the bathroom. You notice there are some frayed stitches where the connector loops attach to the body of the sling. The correct action is A, you can use the sling, there's only a few stitches frayed. B, put it back on the shelf and get another one. C, lift the patient manually. Or D, take the sling out of service, let your facility coordinator or program manager know, and use another sling. The correct answer is D. Any of the other ones are going to be unsafe for your patient and put your patient at risk. Lifting the patient manually is not a solution because it puts both the caregiver and the patient at risk as well. A clip style sling can be used with any kind of hanger bar, true or false. Hopefully you answered B, false. Clip style slings can only be used with clip style hanger bars. Loop style slings can only be used with loop style hanger bars. Mixing these two is unsafe for your patient. Your patient weighs 420 pounds and wants to get up for lunch. They're mobility level 2, which means they need a powered device to help them get up. The lift is 440 pound capacity. The sling is 400 pound capacity. Can you use this lift and sling combination to achieve your patient mobility goal? A, no. B, yes. Hopefully you said no. Your patient weighs 420 pounds, which exceeds the 400 pound capacity of your sling. Congratulations, you have successfully completed the module on equipment review, lifts and slings. We hope this has helped you increase your awareness of your own strengths and opportunities to improve in your role. We encourage you to connect with other UPLs to discuss what you've learned and help each other strengthen your team through what you have learned. Thank you for your service and help to give back to those who have served us.